Hey everyone, Dr. Kuniak with a supplementary video lecture. I wanted to talk a little bit about group and my experiences with group, and so one of the things that kind of came to mind for me. I know we're starting to read into termination stages in group, but we still got a long way to go in the class. So I wanted to kind of go back to the forming stages and how important it is as a group leader to encourage um, interaction between our group members, and also kind of how we want to be cautious. I don't want to say how dangerous it is, but at the same time, how we want to be cautious to get a group, and a group can even be two people, to get a group to kind of move through the stages and get to real working stages. The group members have to challenge one another, and they have to know that it's safe. So part of this is forming the group rules, which we did in class, and that's been great. A lot of times in groups, we'll read those every time. We're not doing it in class. We can, but it is certainly something that I encourage folks to do, and to remake those rules every time, and to revisit those rules if the group is kind of constantly changing, and certainly if a group starts new, to restart them. But one of the things I've thought about is how, so it goes kind of to family-based counseling, to structural family therapy specifically. Salvador Minuchin said that the best opportunity we had to make change in a system, and a group is a system, is to do it whenever the group is in chaos. And so it becomes our role as a counselor to seek out those opportunities to destabilize the system to make change. And so what he's really saying there is, a lot of times our groups get into structures and patterns of interaction that, though they may be dysfunctional, are safe in that they're predictable. And so people may know what needs to change, or may know things that they need to do or say, but they're less willing to do them or say them because they don't want to disrupt the pattern of interaction. And so what Salvador Minuchin suggested was, it becomes the counselor's role to move the group, the family, into chaos by pointing out those patterns of interaction, and trying to shift them, to give some people voice. So encouraging some people to talk about something, to notice things that are happening in the system and point those out, so that so that it kind of enhances the dynamic, and folks are more likely to slip into a chaotic pattern. And what you're really trying to do there is get them to say the stuff that they want to say, because then when the system is disrupted, even though chaos is not where we want things to kind of, and chaos sounds like things are blowing up to me and things are on fire, and it can absolutely get that way. But really what he's saying is, we want it to be destabilized. We want them to feel out of their comfort zone, and that's what chaos really is. And so it doesn't have to be blown up and fiery and all this sort of stuff, but it has to be different than what's happening typically. um, because then when people are unstable, they're more likely to try new things, because the patterns of interaction have been disrupted. So they'll be more, they won't necessarily be comfortable, but they will be more comfortable to try something that they would not otherwise have tried. And so the system, and the group for that matter, because again, systems are groups and groups are systems, the system will try to reach homeostasis again. That is what systems do. So the group will try to get to a new pattern of interaction. And Salvador Minuchin would say that, it's it could be better and it could be worse. The group could find a negative pattern of interaction as their new dynamic. And that's fine, because at least it's different. We knew that the old system wasn't working. We don't know if the new system will or not, but we knew that the old one wasn't. So we need to try something new. And if it's not a working pattern of interaction, then it becomes our role to disrupt it again. So initially, I think we want to create a lot of safety, as much safety as we can, and we want to be much more central to the group dynamic. I think that it becomes our role, as the group starts to shift into a storming stage, that we need to become somewhat proximal, so a little bit more distant. But we still need to have safety in the group that we can manage, and we need to push on things a little bit to try to get the group to be somewhat disrupted. Again, I think it becomes this dance where we're trying to do that in a way that we can control, so it doesn't get so out of hand that the group realizes the leader can't manage it, and so we completely undermine our own safety. But I think that it has to be enough that we, push for some change. The more we can do that and the more comfortable we are to do that, and it's very much something that you have to feel as you go. It's not something that I can really teach. If we were doing, like, if you were observing me doing a group, I could show you what I mean. Not really doing that super actively in this class. We just don't have the time to do it. But it is something you can feel your way through. Whenever you start to feel a little bit uncomfortable, that's kind of where you want to stay for a little bit, and then you want to pull it back. You don't want people to feel uh, supercharged around discomfort all the time, but you want them to be kind of riding the edge of that a little bit, so that they're more likely to try something new. If you have to, you can break up you can, time out, end the interaction, everybody go to your corners, cool off for a moment, come back. I try not to do that because it's hard to get everybody to come back. So, like, if we can settle it down for a little bit. The other thing you want to do is you want to make notes for individual sessions that will hopefully follow. And then in talking to some folks, something else that comes to mind that I feel like I should mention to the entire group is it's okay to speak to what it is that you're observing that's happening in the group. So if all of a sudden no one's talking and you think it's because something was triggering, you can bring that up, and you give voice to it in the room if no one else is, because you can be, again, a little bit more proximal, a little bit more, in proximity but distant. And you can articulate what you're observing better than the group members might be able to. So this way you can talk about, so it sounds like, since Bobby brought up, this sort of thing, I can feel some weight in the room. Does anybody want to talk about that? I don't want you to talk at Bobby necessarily, but I want you to speak to the vibe that's going on in the room right now. So I think it's okay to talk about those sort of things, and to kind of call that out. I think it's also okay to call out members in the group and say, I think so. Let me hesitate and say, I think it would be helpful if you kind of gauge the situation, but it's okay to say, like, hey, Tommy, why don't I've noticed you haven't talked too much. Do you have anything you want to add to the group? And then judge it. Like, if you can push a little bit more to get them to talk, then great. If it feels like you're going to push up against a boundary and it's going to become problematic, then maybe let go if you feel like it might be kind of kicking a powder keg or something like that. Groups are really active, and so that's why it's helpful to sometimes to have a co-facilitator so they can kind of observe. And there have been times when I've co-facilitated a group and I've said, hey, Tommy, you haven't talked real well, and my co-facilitator has said, you know what, I think that instead of going to Tommy, maybe we could go to so and so. And so I've taken that lead because they observed something that I didn't. You're not always going to have the benefit of having a good co-facilitator in the room with you. You may not have a co-facilitator at all. It's helpful if they're good. But then talking to them before and after and kind of deciding, okay, well, what did you see that I didn't see? Okay, thank you for preventing me from doing that. Or, like, you know, you can have a code word or something like that when you're running out of stuff to say, and the co-facilitator can kind of jar the situation to go forward. But you know, it really is getting a feel for the group and deciding how much more can I should push. Like, we don't make change if there's not a little bit of pushing, but is this a safe time to do it or not? And I think it's okay to kind of take it to always have in your back pocket safe harbor stuff that you can go to so that you can diffuse the situation, and then maybe give it till next time when you meet and come back and say, so I noticed that things were getting kind of heated. I want to talk about that. I don't want us to blame anyone if possible. Like, I want to try to avoid that, but I do want to talk about whatever feelings were coming up that that were becoming kind of volatile, because I want to try to get to the productive stuff without getting to anything harmful. So anyway, those are just some thoughts that I had that I wanted to share this week. I intend to kind of create some more videos about stuff that comes up as we're working through this experience. Hope it's helpful. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please send them to me.